Today I'm going to show you how to make classic puff pastry and fill them with these traditional savory options. Classic puff pastry is a versatile and flaky pastry dough that is used in a variety of sweet and savory dishes, including pastries, pies, tarts, and savory appetizers. It's known for its delicate buttery layers, which are created through a process called lamination. Alright, so the first step for our pastry dough is to make our butter block. So to do that, we need room temperature butter, unsalted butter as a matter of fact, and regular all-purpose flour. So I'm just gonna break down this butter a little bit before I add in the flour. You want it at room temperature because it will make it a lot easier to mix in your flour as opposed to it being cold and hard. Of course, if you prefer to do this in a mixer, you could do that as well, but it's not really much, so you could do this by hand. So just as an added precaution, I'm just gonna sift the flour. You could do this beforehand, or just like this, you could just, as again, because it's not much, I could just do it one time directly over the butter. Right, so just fully incorporate the flour. You're gonna take your time so when the flour splashes up and gets out to the bowl. You see a lot of people using margarine or a combination of margarine and shortening as an alternative for butter. And I think the main reason for that is because of the cost of butter. But I mean, if you're gonna go through all the trouble to make pastry dough yourself, you might as well just do it the right way. And the right way calls for butter. So you're gonna continue to break down your butter while you're mixing it. So any little lumps of butter you see and any concentration of flour, you want to be sure to spread that out as best as you could. What the flour does, the flour will help the butter stay in place, if you will, because obviously when heated, butter likes to melt, right? So what this will do is this will help keep the flour in place in the pastry while baking. So what I'm doing here while I'm turning it and spreading it, I'm just looking for any remaining clumps of butter and flour, because as I said, you want to spread it out as evenly as possible. You don't need to be precise, but you want to try and be looking for an even square. So my aim here is to get an 8" by 8" even square so that I could fold that into our pastry dough. Yeah, so what I'm going to do, I'm just going to take the butter now and transfer it to the wax paper. Spread it as best as I could. Try and help shape the square before I begin to fold. Now, as I said again, we're aiming for an 8" square. Alternatively, what you could do is after you mix your flour and butter, you could return it to the chiller for it to harden a bit, which for some people at least makes this part a lot easier. Just about to the 8" mark here. Oh yeah. So I'm using the wax paper now to give me the straight lines. So I'm just pulling it until all of the wax paper makes contact with your butter. So here's a trick. So you see how the end of this wax paper has reached or hasn't fully covered the butter. I'll just fold over and then I'll just bring this one in and let it do the same thing. Wait until it makes full contact with the butter. I'll just take the wax paper here, fold it. So I'm just taking my hands and I'm just spreading it a little bit, forcing it in until all of it makes contact with the paper. Of course, you could use a rolling pin, but this butter is very malleable. So I'm just using my hand now. Transfer it to a quarter sheet and place it in our chiller until the butter is firm to touch. Yeah, so probably about a half an hour or so. I'm just flipping it over one time because that'll just make life a lot easier when time to take it out and take it out to the wax paper. Alright, so here I'm just finishing up sifting the flour for our pastry dough, and next to it we have some cold unsalted butter, salt, and in the freezer we have the water, because you want the water to be ice cold. Now, one of the things that I forgot to mention earlier with the butter is that baking is a science. So, you see a lot of recipes telling you 1 cup of flour, quarter cup of butter, 2 tablespoons of butter, but I would strongly recommend for recipes like this to weigh all the ingredients. So I'm going to be including the weights of all of the ingredients, including the water, as well as the irregular measurements. Yeah, but just to be safe, because the weight is the most accurate measurement for each ingredient. Yeah, so now that I've incorporated the salt, I'm gonna cut in my butter. So what you wanna do, of course, again, you could do this in a mixer, but this is not much, so I could do this by hand. But ideally, you wanna break up your butter into small pieces to resemble something similar to like coarse cornmeal. Yeah, and again, you want to make sure small even pieces, just again for even baking throughout. And again, you want your water to be ice cool. I mean, to be safe, what you could do, you could chill all the ingredients. You could measure and weigh all these ingredients out the night before or a few hours before, and put it in your chiller and let it chill overnight to ensure all the ingredients remain chilled, because you don't want any room temperature any room temperature water or flour to start to melt your butter. So you see the change in texture of the flour. You see how it's starting to resemble a coarse cornmeal consistency. That's what we're looking for. Right, so here we have our ice cold water going in with all one time, because you want to do this quickly because you don't want the temperature of the ingredients to drop. Just using my finger to help bring all the ingredients together before we start to knead. Alright, so now I'm just using my 4 fingers to scoop up the dry ingredients and incorporate it into our wet dough. So rotate the bowls, scoop it up, because all the dry ingredients tend to sit at the bottom. Just using the ball of dough to clean the bowl. So ideally what you want to do here is you want to bring together all the ingredients. You don't necessarily need your pastry dough to be a smooth ball of dough, but you want to bring everything together. Make sure everything is well incorporated. Clean your bowl, because again, this will help going forward. I'm going to just cover it with some cling and let it sit for about 5 minutes before we shape it into our square. So I'm just letting the cling make direct contact with the dough. This will help to prevent any scabs. And I'm just going to place it in the fridge and let it sit for 5 minutes. Alright, so 5 minutes has passed. So let's check the dough. So it comes together nice, lovely. Transfer it over. I'm going to start to shape it. You're looking for a 9-inch square. So, I mean, you could lightly flour your counter, but trying to avoid adding in as much flour. I'm just going to transfer it directly to the cling and continue spreading it on the cling. Right, so as I said, we're aiming for 9 inches. So you see we actually over 9 in the center, at about 9.5, and then here we had about 8.5. So I'm just gonna now pull it lengthways. So we can, now we under 9 here, right? Okay. Again, if you feel more comfortable doing this on your counter with your rolling pin, by all means. But I guess I've done this a couple times, so, and I prefer to keep a clean seam. Right, so here we are the 9-inch mark. On the width, we had about 9.5 inches. So what we're gonna do now is let me just pull some extra. Cut this. just like what I did with the wax paper, I'm just gonna pull the dough to square it off a little bit. Pull it just to square it off a little bit. Just cut off this extra. And then we get this out of the way. And then same thing on the edges. Just want to pull the extra, the cling out. So what I'm doing, I'm just pulling all the excess cling. And I'm just going to use the cling that's at the bottom here and push in the dough just to shape it out. And then fold the excess cling over. And then one more time, just come with the knife. So you see we actually under here, and here we under too. So just use this time to spread it out some more. Just give it a little space to spread. And again, as I said, it doesn't need to be exact. Okay, the measurements is more or less a guide. We're gonna place this in your refrigerator to chill and relax for about 30 minutes. So our dough and butter is rested. So here's an easy way to tell when you're ready to move on to the next step. See how hard this butter is? It's barely indented. Let me see if I could. See how hard it is? So that's what you want. You want it stiff. Stiff. Makes it a lot easier to work with. Still somewhat malleable, but firm to the touch. So what we're gonna do, I'm gonna throw him back in the chiller, and then we're gonna roll this 9-inch square into a 12-inch square. Lightly flouring the work surface here. Always good to have a brush handy because you wanna brush off as much flour as you could, especially when folding, because you don't want to be folding in layers of raw flour. Yeah? So just keep this handy. Flour the top and my rolling pin. And we're just gonna push him out. So as I said, we're aiming for a 12-inch square. It does not have to be exact. So this I'll take you right at the 12-inch mark. And then here we just over. But that's all right, we'll take that. Just brushing off excess flour. Time to open up our butter block. I'm gonna rest on a 45-degree angle. And what you wanna do, you wanna bring your ends in. Yeah, and just pinch it. And just pinch it. And then what you wanna do here, you wanna pinch together all you do. So what you're doing essentially is you're just sealing your butter block. Alright, so what I'm going to do here, just going to flip him over. So again, lightly dust my counter, rest him down. I use what flour I have from the top, lightly dust the top, and I'm just pressing. Press to help reshape, help seal those edges. Just lightly press it. You could fold now, but just to be safe, especially if this is your first time doing this, I would recommend you let it chill for about at minimum 30 minutes before attempting your first fold. Just bringing in the edges just to help it maintain its shape. Nice flat surface. And you go in the chiller to chill for minimum 30 minutes. Alright, so here we have our chilled and relaxed block of pastry dough. So now what we're going to do is we're going to roll it out into the required dimensions, which is ideally anywhere between 10 inches by 20 inches, which will give it its shape for us to begin folding. So as you can see, the surface here is liberally dusted because we want to prevent any sticking. What I like to do first before I roll it out is just press it out. I'm just using the weight of the rolling pin to roll out my dough. I'm not applying much pressure. To help keep the rectangular shape, I like to roll out from the center towards each corner. This helps keep that square shape. Alright, let me measure and show y'all. Alright, so we're at about 9.5 now. Same 9.5. Measure and see where we are. Alright, so we have more than the width, and we are inch shy on the length. Now before I continue to roll, I just want to show you this for extra to come in. So as you will see, you'll have one or two parts that just started to burst a little bit. If you see that happening, is the first roll, things are going to be a little rough, so don't panic. Just take a little flour and just cover it. You can just lightly press it in, and you continue rolling after that. So as I said, I'm about an inch shy of my desired length. So I'm just gonna continue, and once again, I'm not applying any pressure to the rolling pin. I'm just using the weight of the rolling pin. Yeah, so let's check the measurements here. Aiming for 20 inches. Oh yeah, well, I'm well above 20. I'm at 23. And I'm at 13.5. So I'm just gonna fluff the dough a little bit, just to allow it to contract. You see how quick that's contracted. One other measurement. Right, so reach 19.75. So we'll take that, and we're still over the width. So we'll see if I could bring it in a little bit. But again, you don't have to be anal about the dimensions. I just am, but you don't really have to be. So I'm at 13 here. So what I'm gonna do now is time for our letter fold. So what we're gonna do now is I'm just gonna use my pastry brush and brush off the excess flour. Alright, so we fold it in thirds. And then before we fold this over, just brushing up this, because again, you don't want any flour in between your layers. So you want to get as much off as possible. And also, you could use this opportunity to line up your edges. Right, coming over. Use this opportunity, line up your edges, straighten your dough. Then brush off all your excess flour. Lovely. So once you've reached this point, you've started your first fold, or you've accomplished your first fold. So what you're going to do now is transfer it back to your baking sheet, cover it with cling, and let it rest. Again, you want to let the protein in your flour rest and relax. Allow your butter to go down in temperature, cool down a bit so that it doesn't melt before you do your second fold, and you are basically repeating this process 6 times. Alright, so now we are at the last and final roll, so pretty much just like the other 5 that we did before. Just gonna press it out to the required dimensions, 10 inches by 20 inches. And do our last fold. After that, what we're gonna do is we're gonna let it rest. We're gonna cover it with cling and let it rest for about, I would say, minimum 3 to 4 hours, or for best results, overnight, before you roll it out to make your individual pastries. Alright, so while our pastry dough is resting in the chiller, we're gonna start to make the fillings. So one of the more traditional fillings we like to make here in Trinidad are beef pies. So we start, and this is just some 80-20 ground beef. No fat in the no oil in the pan. I'm relying on the fat in the beef itself. So I'm just scraping it. Yeah, some will stick at the beginning, that's alright. I'm just scraping it here, just to allow for even cooking. And this is gonna be a fast cook. And I'm probably just gonna cook this about 75% of the way, because while in the oven, in case any pastry, it is also going to cook. So there's absolutely no need to cook this twice, as I will also dry it out too. So this is going to be a quick cook. I just want to turn it around for even cooking, break it up, because meats like to clump together, proteins like to bind when activated by heat. And I'm just going in with the flavoring. So here I have garlic, onion, tomato paste for color, and to help thicken it, some pepper sauce and some spicy mustard. I mean, really and truly, you could flavor this how you want. Some of us here in the Caribbean also like to put raisins, and then one more item, put in some pimento flakes. So of course, if you have fresh pimento, by all means use that. But for those of you who don't, you could try this one. And then lastly, just seasoning with some salt and black pepper. Alright, mix that up. You want to let this come to room temperature or even chilled. Why? Because when chilled, it actually allows you to form like individual balls, almost like a meatball, when filling your pastry, which makes filling the pastry a lot easier. Because when you clump it up, the individual pieces of the meat, they won't like fall off or go to the edge. So it makes filling a lot easier. But don't worry, when we reach that time, I'll show you what I mean. Alright, so we're just gonna switch up the fire here, taste, and let it cool. Alright, so next up we have our cheese filling. So here we have some New Zealand cheddar cheese. It's a mild cheese, it's a bit oily, but for some reason we love it here in the Caribbean. So to that I'm adding some pickled pimentos. Yes, we'll include this recipe in the description. Some good high quality mustard, pepper sauce, flour, and a pinch of salt that the flour is hiding. So we're gonna add in all our ingredients. The reason for the salt is because when the cheese goes into the oven, gets heated, it'll obviously want to melt, and sometimes tends to want to run out of your pastry. So the flour helps to keep your cheese filling intact. So what I'm gonna do, I'm just using a fork here to break up the cheese and mix up all our ingredients. Another thing I like to do is to thaw the cheese before grating. Makes grating a lot easier, and also it makes mixing a lot easier. And once you get this mixed up, I like to throw it back into the fridge for it to chill out and harden a bit, because just like with the beef, it'll make life a lot easier if you're able to clump it up into individual portions when filling your pastry dough. Yeah, so we're just gonna finish mix this up, throw it in the fridge, and move on to the sausage. Right, and I save the easiest one for last. So here we have some halved extra large sausages. To that, I'm just adding in good quality mustard. Now, traditionally here in the Caribbean, some of us like to add green seasoning or maybe make a sauce for it. But to me, a good quality mustard does the trick, because this mustard is full of garlic powder, onion powder, some other spices, turmeric. So to me, it's all I need at least. But of course, if you want to add green seasoning or create your own, of course you could do that too. And that's it. So we're gonna put this with our beef and cheese in the chiller to relax and cool off, and then move on to our pastry dough. Alright, so now we're just gonna square it off. So I'm just using a ruler. You could use a pizza slicer. I'm just using my knife here just to square it off. You want to roll your dough out anywhere from like a quarter inch or even a little less. So we're gonna do a couple different shapes for the beef pies. Just gonna cut it into individual rounds. So I'll get 4 here. Alright, and then cut it in 3 again. Alright, so starting off with the beef, I'm gonna use these rounds for the beef, but as I said, the shapes, size is really subjective. So here we have the chilled meat. So this is what I was talking about. When it's chilled, it's a lot easier to clump up. This one has raisins, because as I said, I prefer raisins, but if you're not into that, that's perfectly fine. So where do you clump it up? And you get it in the center. I just have some 1 beaten egg with some water. Just gonna brush the edges. Take one of the other rounds, pull it over, and just press it down on right around the edges. And that's it. Then you just pick it up and put it right on your baking sheet. And the only thing left to do would be to brush it with egg wash, brush it up, but I'll wait until the sheet is full, I'll brush all, and I'll go into the oven 400 degrees for about 20 to 25 minutes. So same thing, just like the beef. When it's chilled, it's a lot easier to clump up and manage. So for the cheese, same concept. I'm dropping it in the center, and I'm going to fold this over. Using my egg wash, which will act as glue. And I'm lifting up my dough, and when I'm lifting, I'm stretching it slightly, just enough to reach the edges, and pressing it. And then these little extra clumps of flour, what you could do, just take your brush and brush it off. Yeah, and that's it. Straight onto the pan, it'll go as well, just like this. Yeah, let me show you the sausage roll now. So for the sausage roll, here you see we have our sausages rolled in the mustard. I'm just gonna drop him here, and the only difference to this is that I'm gonna roll it, because hence the name sausage roll, right? So just gonna brush all the way around. Right, let me bring it closer to me, so I'll roll that way so you can see. And I'm just gonna roll, and when the seam is at the bottom, I'll just give it a slight press and just press down the ends. And just like with the cheese, any clumps of flour on top, you can just brush off with your pastry brush. Just press the edges one more time. This here is your sausage roll. Right, so we're going to continue to make out the rest. Fill the pan, then we'll brush all with the egg wash before we put it in the oven. Alright, so now it's time to brush. So I'm just applying, not too much here, just enough just to help give it a little color. I mean, you don't have to, but this helps to give it a nice golden brown color. So I'm just brushing the top. So now we're just gonna throw it in the oven. As I said, it's set at 400 degrees Fahrenheit, anywhere between 20 to 25 minutes. At the halfway mark, I'll just rotate for even baking. All right, so we're at the halfway point here, so let's check on our pastries. You just ask her to just go in and show the layers here before I pull it out. So you could already see the layers starting to rise. So what we're gonna do, we're just gonna rotate. And this is just for even baking. And we're just gonna let it finish off here. Alright, so it's time to check our pastry. There's the timer going off there. So let me show you an easy way to check. You just scoop it up and turn it over. So you see when it's brown like that, you know it's cooked. So we're gonna take it out, let it cool, and then we'll show you. Alright, time to check out the pies. So we could come in here, we could start with the beef pies. So you could see all the individual layers here. Look at that. That's where you wanna get, look at all these layers. That's why I went through a lot of trouble with these 6 folds. Yeah, so let's just make sure, get them up. You can see even with the cheese pie, again, all the layers. Look at this one here, all the layers. I'll hold it up for you to see. See how much layers. Yeah, so just using my offset spatula here just to raise it up, make sure none are sticking to the pan. So you see, even with the flour, some of the cheese still came out. Now you could take a fork and seal the edges, but the issue with the fork is it prevents the layers from rising. So that's why I just prefer to use my hand. Yes, here we have the sausage rolls. All right, so let me cut into each one. We're gonna start first. We could start with the beef. Let me cut into each one. You see how crispy that is? That's where you want to hear that crunch. That's where you want. Look at that. Look at that. The beef still retained a lot of its moisture. And of course, as I said, my one has raisins, but that's totally optional. Pastry is perfectly cooked on the inside, but still has that golden crust on the outside and that golden brown crust at the bottom as well. Lovely. Moving on to the cheese pie. Cut this one. Oh yeah, look at that cheese. Cheese is melting. And the pickled pieces of the pickled pimento. Again, golden crust at the bottom, golden crust on top. That's what you're looking for, people. Right, last but not least is sausage roll. Cut out this one here. Oh yeah, look at that. See the mustard around, the rim of mustard. That's what you want. Oh. It's taking me back to like primary school days, boy, smelling sausage roll and thing in the tuck shop. Wow. The only thing one left to do now is to eat you also. Once again, thank you all so much for watching. Be sure to like, subscribe, follow, send us your comments, send us in any questions you might have. Thank you, bye.